r/Askreddit by Reddit and chill. People with expired non-disclosure agreements. What's the juicy info you can now tell us? Had to sign an NDA in order to reforest an artillery range that was last active in the 1920s. Just in case we found some high-tech military secrets from 90 years ago. If you have a Comcast voice remote and you say, "Make Robert happy," it will turn the TV to Doctor Who. There used to be a lot of hidden voice commands in the system. Product managers made us take a lot of them out. But that one is still in there. Edit. A couple people have asked me who Robert is. He is one of the software engineers working on the voice remote system. As a proof of concept early on he put that in. And just never removed it. Edit 2. Some people are asking for another one. If you say Big Boss it'll make your TV go to an empty page left over for the Minions movie and make your TV play a minion noise. It seems they removed a lot of them. But that one is still there too. Just tested this. 100% true. I served on a board that had kidnap ransom insurance for all the board members. A condition of the insurance was that we could tell no one that we had kidnap ransom insurance. My company used to sell a lot of KNR insurance. Not telling anyone you have KNR insurance is number 1. Or at least top 5. I work on a popular show for Netflix that only finishes their episodes like 5 days before they're released. People seem to think their batch completed and they have the entire show ready to go. Yeah, it sucks, but unfortunately that's actually quite common in Korea. Writers are writing the script based on audience reactions literally the day before and sometimes modify the plot to fit what's more popular. You can forget about normal work-life balance. It's common to work 48+ hours straight just to accommodate this ridiculous way of doing things. My old landlord building company paid all expenses for me to break my lease, move out and get all my possessions he treated after I came back from study abroad to bedbug infestation. They didn't want other residents to know if they threatened to sue they could get their stuff treated. That the charter school I taught for was in reality a Scientologist school. We had to do training in Scientology after school for 2 hours a day. We had to sign a NDA to get our $1,000 bonus for doing the non-elective training. Those parents had no idea the school was Scientology. We did not teach them how to be Scientologists. But we certainly used the terminology and all Ron's ideas. This was about 25 years ago before we knew much about Scientology. I didn't buy in and I wasn't invited back the following year. The school dissolved about 4 years later. I applied for a job and they sent me that Ron Hubbard Scientology personality test before even offering an interview. Couldn't tell if it was a joke. But I filled it out anyway and I was never called for an interview. The job was for making clay tiles at a small studio. They post job openings pretty frequently though. One of the more bizarre experiences I've had. All my NDAs come from working in film and video production, so there really isn't too much juicy shit, but the one thing that has always stuck with me is Jessica Chastain gets whatever the duck she wants whenever the duck she wants it. To add. Totally forgot. Drake is terrified of owls. By the sounds of things you could go on IMDb and fill it with info that people didn't know they needed. Like, as a random thought, Jennifer Aniston jumps every time she farts. I catered a expensive wedding and Drake performed at the after party. That's right. Drake took a wedding gig. A lot of people don't realize that major musical artists do private gigs all the time. As long as the folks hiring them can pay their rate, which is usually the same or very close as they would get for playing an arena, festival, etc. Those things expire. My NDA says it only expires when the information becomes public. It's simple. Release the information publicly on Reddit. So the NDA expires. My wife was born in Vietnam. Her mother met and married a Navy officer. And he adopted my wife and her sister. And got them all out of Vietnam in 1972. Saving their lives. The majority of my mother-in-law's family were well-off business people. And were ethnically Chinese. And were executed by the communists. My wife's dad passed away long ago. And my wife never did learn very much about his time in the Navy. All she could tell me was he was involved with submarines. 3 years ago we visited my wife's mom in Hawaii, and she gave us a trove of stuff. Pictures and papers she thought were related to his Navy career. The first thing I find is his service record. Holy shit. My wife's dad was a badass. Joined the Navy in 1940. Was chief mechanic on submarines during World War II. Earns 3 battle stars. Then all kinds of work on advanced submarines. Then later in his career some really weird assignments. Like hauling stuff up to Alaska for defense radar sites. Or decommissioning ships that were used in nuclear bomb tests. It took a couple of weeks. But one day I noticed that his naval career ended in 1960. But my wife said he was a naval commander when he met my wife's mother. I asked my wife about this. And she was a bit confused. I asked what his uniform was like. And she says khaki pants. White shirt. I'm really confused now, so I look at some other paperwork we had from the trove. There was a folder that contained some certificates from a Chicago-based air conditioning repair program. Plus a certificate for electrical work. Dated 1961. Then the real answer revealed itself. It was his employment documentation for USAID. Turns out my wife's adoptive father was CIA station chief in Saigon during the Vietnam War. And she never knew. Her dad never revealed anything. That's fascinating. I'd watch that TV show. Pasado's Safe Haven oversold their memorial dog cottages. So when a donor, they cost $10,000, came to visit their dog's memorial cottage that they donated $10,000 for, Pasado's would have to swap out the memorial plaque. Super shitty. Imagine a cemetery full of mausoleums, where you use a keycard to enter and the plaques are all nicely mounted panel TVs, showing heartwarming videos of the deceased. Except that the keycard is tied to the video shown. So you could have limitless people interred in one mausoleum. And the video just switches based on whoever swipes in. Still another 65 years before I can reveal the outdated 1980s designs for my nuclear submarine. All the people at the retirement home are going to lose their minds. 1980s design sounds like the 21 class of boat. The joke for that class was that the design engineers introduced their first prototype to the admirals with pride and glee. The admirals took a look at the designs and said this will be the most baddest submarine in history. One question though, where do the people sleep and eat? The engineers looked at them with confusion and said people? I worked at a printing company outside DC in the late 90s early zeros. We did work for the government from time to time. We printed materials for the investigation into the Branch Davidian cult in Waco, TX. There was tons of aerial photos of the compound and for some reasons David Koresh owned many Camaros. They were mostly old beat up ones. But there were a few dozen on the compound. So you're telling me you have juicy info on a cult, but you're only mentioning some old cars that were there. Grandpa worked with satellites in the 50s, 60s for the Air Force. Like, if you tell anyone anything about these, we'll execute you for treason stuff. Walked into a comic book store in the 90s and found trading cards with all the info he was sworn to guard decades earlier. I'm confused. Did the info become public? Outback Steakhouse's recipe for macaroni and cheese. 4 ounces of heavy whipping cream. 4 ounces of Velveeta cheese. 9 ounces of al dente penne pasta. Throw it in a saute pan and melt the cheese. Bam. Outback mac and cheese. Edit. Just for clarification, this is the old recipe. I left the company in 2003. The newer recipe is cavatappi pasta and spices and crispy topping. Yo, that's pretty interesting. Thanks for the info. Unrelated, but my uncle has a non-compete that lasts 2 years past his death. It is 2 years past whenever he dies. His date of passing is not a known piece of data or plan. He can disclose post-mortem by leaving a letter in the lawyer's safe like on Back to the Future. A client invented a watch with 2 faces so you could set it to time zones. Nice for international travelers who couldn't do simple math. My boss broke the NDA and the company was almost sued. He had to pay them something. But I don't know what. Idiot told the client that he shared the idea with a sales rep from a watch company to see if it was a good idea. The rep said yes. Don't worry. The rep promised to not tell anyone else. Edit. It looked something like this. Poshmark.com link. How does a person that clueless become a boss? I was once on the camera crew of Pimp My Ride and most of the show is fake. The guys knew ahead of time that we were arriving. The car had to be fully paid off. And most of the work done has to be paid for and almost full. My cousin sent in a letter trying to get his car on the show. They told him his car wasn't ghetto enough. Their words. The state of Oklahoma once busted a counterfeit check ring because the individuals misspelled Oklahoma on the front of some checks. They were damn near perfect copies with valid account, check and amount numbers and were caught when an employee who ran a reader/sorter machine noticed a rejected check with the spelling Oklahoma. I was that employee and had to testify in court regarding finding the checks. I think I'm still not supposed to talk about certain details, even though it was a long time ago. Just, come on. How could you not quadruple check something simple like that when committing fraud? I had to sign a non-compete and NDA when I worked at a successful local bakery. We didn't sell anything super extravagant. Kinda your normal stuff like cookies, brownies, cake, cupcakes, croissants. The most complicated thing we did was candy bars, but even they weren't patisserie level. The NDA was just to ensure that we didn't share take-home recipes and start our own business. Which is totally reasonable. We could tell people the ingredients because of allergies and whatnot, but not specific brands or recipes. People would come in and make conversation by asking what our secret was to such amazing treats. Yeah, no. Just being complimentary and not really expecting me to spell out the recipes. I'd always playfully say, oh, well, you know I can't tell you that. Or to the more chill fun customers I'd say I'd tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. Some people really wanted to know though, and I'd have to tell them I actually legally can't talk about it. It's interesting how when some people realize they're not allowed to know, they get ravenous about getting the information. I had someone trying to sneak in our kitchen storeroom to try and deduce something. The big secret? Good quality ingredients and basic baking technique. Literally that's it. People could easily find recipes online of close approximations of anything she made and recreate them to a comparable level if they bought good ingredients and learned pretty basic baking skills. Facebook lied internally to all of their employees about an issue raised by several fates about very targeted advertisements appearing in their feed based on conversations that only their phone's microphone could pick up. Messenger and the Facebook app both had reported issues internally about this. I have commented on this before and been blown off. Deleted comment history. People said, oh, no. FB's algorithms are just that good. They don't need your mic. Bullshit. I put my phone next to a Mexican radio station and got ads in Spanish for days. Deleted FB 2 years ago and haven't looked back. It's good to know who my real friends are, the ones that actually call or text. I once dog sat Beyonce's dog. It arrived in a Louis Vuitton dog carrier and was kind of an a-hole. And she made you sign an NDA. I was one of the pilots for some stunt flying scenes in a recent episode of Fear the Walking Dead. The only bummer was that a good chunk of our efforts, particularly the highest risk ones, were left on the cutting room floor. Stuff like landing on and taking off from a small country road with power lines and trees on either side and at either end. With very little room for error width-wise. The real kicker was having to land at night on an old runway surrounded by 6 80-foot camera lighting booms that only served to blind us, it seemed. Landing mere feet away from actors, with the runway edges only being lit by a string of Christmas lights. Those lights had to be turned off for a good portion of our final approach for the sake of the scene. But we made it work. It took 3 separate attempts. But they got the shot. Despite the best parts of our scenes being cut. It was personally rewarding to know that we nailed every bit of flying they asked us to do. And the production team was comprised of nothing but top quality individuals. Was a very cool experience. Edits. Grammar and details. That they were coming out with a Microsoft Watch to rival the Apple Watch. This was 4 years ago if not longer. You can bet it flopped. Introducing the Microsoft Zune Watch. Someone I know signed a NDA with a fruit company because her phone caught fire during the night while charging with official hardware. She got paid in the six figures to not talk about it after reporting the issue and got to discuss it with high-ranking officer of said company. Fruit company because her phone caught fire. Yeah, those evil Blackberries. I work in advertising and have worked specifically on a few Apple commercials. They are insane with the amount of NDAs they make you sign before you can work on a spot for the latest iPhone. They are paranoid that new upcoming features leaked. It is completely ludicrous because all you have to do is Google new iPhone features and every single one of their so-called secrets is already on the web. From what I learned in advertising, you can Google those features because some idiot comes back from signing an NDA and immediately calls a contact at a tech news site and leaks all of the info. That's how everyone knew the release date of the Pixel 4 before Google even officially revealed anything. Ducking like and subscribe.